Good morning, everybody. My name is Noah. I'm one of the educators with Shortcuts, and I will be presenting today's classroom session on the online client information card, as well as basics on working with the custom form. So before we get started, we do have some things that we always talk about at the start. So this presentation is going to be about 30 minutes. We are going to allow time for questions at the end. We are recording this session, so in case you need to leave early, that's okay. We will send a copy of this recording out a little bit later today. And if you have or happen to be watching this video after the fact, you can always reach out to us on our main company page at shortcuts.net, as well as on our social media pages, including Facebook and Instagram. So let's jump right into it. So today's topic, working with online services, specifically the online client information card. You may see it as CIC, and of course, no sooner do I start recording than an airplane decides to fly over my house. Well, that's one of the things about living in the city. So I hope the plane is now out of range. Okay, so the past few classroom sessions, we have been looking at portions of the Shortcuts console as well as portions of the Shortcuts cloud. So everything we've been reviewing for the past few sessions is online based. You don't necessarily have to be on your main Shortcuts computer in order to access these features. So this is one of them, online client information card. And for some of the salons and some of the spas we work with, they also have custom forms. Now, custom forms are not accessible by default for most locations. It's usually for our tier 2, tier 3 customers, usually the ones that have the high-end salons or the spas that require customers to fill in specific forms, whether it's for skin services, whether it's for tattoos. For example, one of our customers uses it as a tattoo sign-off form, for tanning, for things like that. So we're going to learn how to configure them, how to use them, and how to make sure that your staff has permission to access these. So let's begin. So the first thing we want to do is, if your site has tablets or you want to give your staff access to bring up a client information card on their mobile device, we need to make sure they have permissions. If you hadn't sat in previously on our sessions with working with employee permissions, granting employee permissions, we're going to do a quick review. So most of you should hopefully be familiar with the Shortcuts Online Console. That's at console.shortcutsoftware.com. And this is where you go to configure online booking, or to look at the appointments for the week, or if you have spotlight surveys, to read and to respond to customer surveys. So this is a web page where you grant a number of permissions for online services. So if you are using, or if you want to begin using client information card on a tablet or a mobile device, you need to grant permissions. Those permissions reside in the Site Settings button. It looks like a gear icon. And in the middle of the window, as you scroll down through the various information that we request, there's a series of checkboxes. So do you necessarily want to give your staff permission to access a client card whenever, 24 hours a day? Or would it be better if they can only access it when the business is open, or perhaps a little bit before the business opens or after it closes? So you have three basic sets of features: during business hours only, at all times, so that's 24/7, or during normal business hours plus a few minutes before or after business hours. So where do we go to actually give staff permission? Once you're in site settings, after you choose when the staff has client information card access, you then need to go to manage users. So we're actually going to set one up, for example. So I'm going to get out of the presentation for a moment, and we'll go to the console. So again, we're going to site settings. So once we're in site settings, if we scroll down a little, so this is our test salon, Angel's Salon. So the top portion is where you fill in social media information, contact information. This is important if you're sending out automatic emails to your customers. That was on a previous classroom session if you just want to review. But as we scroll down, there is a portion that says client information card access. So in this case, I have some staff that comes in a little bit early. Perhaps they're cleaning up their station, they're going to the color bar, they're making sure that they have their colors mixed for their very first customer that morning. So I want to make sure they can access it right before my doors open. So I chose the third option. Allow access during business hours plus 30 minutes before and after. Now, if I have not yet given any staff member permission to bring up the client card on a tablet or their mobile device, on the right side, I need to go to Manage Users. Now, this is the list of staff members that already has permission. So let's say Tony or Richard, they hadn't gotten permission yet, and I want to modify that. On the right side, I can press Edit, and I can update their permissions. So as I scroll down, I'm going to make sure that Richard has access. So I'll pretend, let me see, I think Geo is already on there. Is Geo on there? Let me take a look. If he's not, I'll actually create an account for him. Yep. So it looks like Geo's not here, so I'll actually go through the steps. So on the right side, I'm going to add a new user. Remember, you always have two options for adding a staff member. The first one is create a user not associated with a point of sale employee. You almost never use that option. This is usually reserved for business partners that need access to the console. Instead, you're going to choose the second one. Create a user that is a point of sale employee. So somebody that's already in the system that has a schedule, etc., etc. So we're going to choose the second option. If you have multiple locations, you're going to choose which location you're setting up. Now, if a staff member happens to work at both locations, you only need to go to one site to set them up at multiple locations. So I'll choose the first one, Angels Test Salon. And the staff member I'm going to set up is Geo. So I'll press continue. So the first thing we need is the email for the staff member. So I'll say geo@shortcuts.net. So that's his email. And I turned off the microphone for a moment because there was a street sweeper passing by. All the fun things about recording from home. Okay, so after I make sure that I have an email, my staff member's name, at the bottom of the screen, this is where we grant the levels of permission. And these are security based. So when the staff member goes to their schedule or decides to bring up a client card on a mobile device, it will ask them for their security pin from the Shortcuts point of sale. So you absolutely have to make sure the staff member is in your Shortcuts point of sale system and they have a security pin assigned to them. So at the bottom of the screen, the majority of the customers we work with, the bare minimum that they give their staff is employee permission. What this means is they can log into the console and they can look at their appointments for the week. And that's it. That's all they can do. They don't get to see customer surveys. They don't get to see any other employees' information or any employees' appointments, only their own. Now, if the staff member should be able to make appointments for themselves, then you give them a second level of permission, and that's appointment operator. Again, they don't have the ability to look at anybody else's appointments or to make appointments for the other staff members, just themselves. So the majority of the customers we work with, they give their staff these two permissions: employee, appointment operator. So now the question becomes, if you want to give them online client information card access, that's the third checkbox. Some locations only give CIC access to receptionists, for example. So a receptionist that has access to a tablet, an iPad, or a Windows tablet, or an Android at your salon or your spa can just use that instead of the main computer to bring up the customer, bring up their client card, update their information, update their contact details, or possibly access custom forms. So that's CIC access. If the staff member does not have this and they only have appointment operator, the employee can still search for a customer, but most of their information is masked. So, of course, they'll only see the last few digits of a phone number or just a portion of the email, and pretty much that's it. No access to history, no access to custom forms, things like that. That would require CIC access. So in this case, I'm going to give Gio all 3 levels of permission because he should be able to access all of that. Now, if Gio works at 2 locations, at 2 of my salons, then at the bottom, I can press Add Sites. And I can choose my second test salon. And again, I can choose Gio's name. So that's if he was at multiple locations. Otherwise, on the right side, on the top right corner, if I press Save, then Gio is going to get an email. It'll say, you have permission to access the console. This is your username. This is your password. And when Gio logs in, he'll be able to do 2 things. He can look at his appointments, he can make appointments for himself, and he can bring up a customer's client information card, read their history, update their notes, or bring up a custom form. So this is a little bit of a review for giving staff members permission and what the security settings are. So let's go back to the presentation. So most of you are probably already familiar with that because we discussed it on our previous classroom. So now we're adding CIC access. But some of the salons we work with, some of the spas we work with, again, they require customers to fill in a certain form. So back in the old days, we would just print up a bunch of paper forms. The customer would fill it out on a clipboard, hand it into the front desk, and you would either make a copy of it or put it in the customer's file. Now that everything is online or everything is cloud-based or digital, you can actually create a custom form, have the customer fill it in on the tablet, and then Shortcuts will save it into their client information online so that the receptionist or the employee can verify a customer has filled in the proper form. So if you need to create a custom form, once you're in the console, you're going to the client information button. And on the right side, if you have access, there's going to be a forms button and the ability to create a form. Now, some of you may be going to the console later this morning and you have access to client information, but when you go there, you don't see any forms button. Chances are, when you got a license for Shortcuts, that feature was either not available or you're on the Essentials package, which does not include custom forms. So this is something that can always be enabled for your site. You would just need to contact customer care to have this feature enabled for you. So once you go to create a form, what exactly can you create? Well, by default, Shortcuts doesn't necessarily know what this form must contain. So if it's a questionnaire type form where you have to know, does the customer have allergies to certain things, to certain products? Or does the customer have certain medical conditions that need to be recorded? You actually get to create the questions, the answers, and whether it's something the customer fills in by typing in information, or you have predetermined checkboxes with questions. And these can be simple yes or no's, or they can be an entire list of, let's say, allergies. So are you allergic to tea tree? Are you allergic to latex? Are you allergic to whatever it is? And then the customer just selects the checkboxes. Yes, I'm allergic to this, this, and this. So once you start building your form, you can even include pre-populated information. If the customer is already in your Shortcuts system, then you can tell Shortcuts, when I bring up this form, I want to make sure the customer's first name, last name, and phone number are on the list automatically. And it will pop up for the customer. And if the customer decides, I want to update my phone as long as I'm in the form, they can do that. And then once those questions pop up automatically or are pre-filled, then you can introduce your specific questions. Not only do you have the ability to create the form, you have the ability to move the questions in the order of importance to you, and even put in things like, does this form require a signature? Does this form require an employee to verify the data before it gets saved? So all of that is possible in these custom forms. So let's actually jump into it and see some of these options. So again, we'll get out of the presentation. Now, if your site requires custom forms, then on the right side, we'll go to client information. And again, if you have multiple locations, if I was an employee and I just needed to bring up a customer to search for a customer or to have them fill in a form, I would go to the specific site, search for the customer, and then search for the form. But if I'm an owner or I'm a manager and I need to create a form, then on the right side, I need to go to the Forms button. So these are the ones that I've already started. By default, there are no forms in the console. You have to create them. So let's go to one of these, the test waiver. And really all you do is begin by pressing create a form. But I'm going to start or open one that I've already started. So I'll press edit. So at the top of the form, this is the name that appears. So if you want to label it, this is your allergies form, this is your tanning form, this is your LASIK form, whatever the specific form name is, give it a name. And then should the cloud, or in this case the console, save their history every time a client completes it. So there will be a timestamp. The client filled one out last year, the client filled one out 2 years ago, the client filled one out last month, and it will have a timestamp on it. Should the customer fill one out every visit? Should they fill it out once only? Or do they have to fill it every 12 months, for example? So you can always make sure when the customer comes in and you bring up the forms, the timestamp is there and it says, does the customer need to fill out another one? Yes or no. Does a staff member need to review this form before they sign off on it? Yes or no. And this will require the employee to put in their security PIN to verify, yes, the customer signed it, yes, the customer filled in all the appropriate fields, let's save it into their client card. So then the layout. I'm going to delete everything that's on this layout. So this is what you begin with, a completely blank screen. On the right side, you have two sets of fields you can include. Your form fields, these are your questions, or your auto-populate fields. So these are the Shortcuts client fields. Again, if the customer is already in your Shortcuts point of sale system and you want to make sure their name shows up, then you can say include their first name, include their last name, and perhaps include a mobile number. So right away, those three things will auto-populate when you bring up the form. Then underneath that, extra form fields. So what do I want it to say? So I'm going to create a heading. And what is the heading text going to say? Allergies form. So maybe I decide that the form, the name of the form, shouldn't be below first name and last name. So on the right side, I can change the order with any row I've already entered. So now up at the top of the screen, it now says allergies form. So that makes more sense to me. If I decide maybe I want to put in my company logo, so I can select image logo, and I can choose a file, and I'll just choose a placeholder logo. And do I have my Angels logo saved here? Possibly, I might have it saved in my projects folder. Let's see. I might not have it saved here. Oh well, I'll just put in a placeholder picture. So I'll pretend this barber table was my logo. So we probably want to resize it. There we go. So the form, your logo, whatever you want to include, or if I want to get rid of it, I hit the little X. So allergies form, first name, last name, cell phone. Then what do I need after the customer's contact info? So again, extra form fields. I need to have a multiple choice question in there. So I'll choose multiple choice and I can give it a label. So are you allergic to any of the following items? Question mark. And I want the question to appear above the text or above the fields. Is this mandatory? Yes. A customer has to choose from these questions. So how many columns should my questions have? 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, depending on how much space you have on your tablet. In this case, I'll say 3. What are the options? So I'll start with the very first one. Are they allergic to tea tree oil? And then I'll press plus. What else are you allergic to? Are you possibly allergic to latex? Because both of these items are, of course, possibly in my salon. What else are you allergic to? Are you allergic to eggs, for example? Are you allergic to nuts? Are you allergic to conditioners? Etc., etc. So you fill in all of the potential allergies that a customer may have. And then after this question, what else do I have? So do I have a single choice question, like one or the other, yes or no, things like that? Or does the customer then need to sign my terms and conditions? So I can press terms and conditions block. I can give it a label. I can literally call it terms and conditions. Does this require the customer to just click on a checkbox that says, yes, they agree with my terms and conditions? Or does the customer actually have to sign it? So using their finger, sign the tablet. So in there, what are the terms and the conditions? The customer approves, blah, blah, blah. So all of your official terms and conditions will be here, and then the customer needs to sign it. And if you want, under the terms and conditions, you can put in the company name, or as you're writing in the information, and you want to insert your name, your company name, so you don't have to type it out each time, you can press these plus buttons. So you can put in your address, your phone number, company or site name, and that way all of that appears in your terms and conditions. Now, on the right side, if I were to press this save button, so now instead of test waiver, I call it the allergies form and save. And just like that, I've created a custom form. I can always go back in and edit this form and update my questions. So creating a form, it's not very difficult. You choose the wording, you choose the questions, you choose what information is relevant for your business. So once you have a form, how does the staff bring it up? So we've already talked about giving the staff permission. So if you have a tablet, the staff would go to console.shortcutsoftware.com and they'd log in with their email and password. And they can either go to anywhere, which allows them to look at their appointments, or go to the online CIC. Now, if a customer comes in, they're getting a service that requires a form. So what do? So they go to client information, they search for their location, and of course, you have to enter your security PIN. Once you find the customer, you're going to press Client Entry. So this is going to show you a list of any forms they've already completed, or let you choose a form to have them fill in. So this is why it's important that you always have security enabled for your staff. Just because you have online CIC doesn't mean that anybody can use a tablet to bring up a customer's name. They need security access. So then once you bring up a specific form, the customer fills in the blanks, the staff member makes sure that they've reviewed it, and then they put in, again, their security PIN to verify this information, and it saves it into the client card. So it's multiple levels of security. The staff member needs permission to access the form. They need a security PIN to bring it up. They need a security PIN to save any information the client types in. So if the staff member just wanted to review those forms, when you search for a customer and you go to their client history, it'll actually show all the forms they've created in the past, but they can also add additional notes. And this is general information for every form. If they want to say the client had actually filled in the form on their previous visit, I just verified it, or I updated a phone number, whatever that is, the staff member has the ability to update that message in the client card or add any additional history. And that is actually the online client information card and working with custom forms in a nutshell. So we've learned how to assign security permissions, how to add staff members so that they can bring it up online. We've talked about creating forms. You can create multiple forms and choose if the customer has to fill one out each time they visit or for certain services, and then how to bring it up, how to search for it, how to update that information in the client card. So now we're going to open up the floor to questions. So we always post our webinars. You can always sign up if this is your first one. You can always sign up on our Shortcuts webpage. But now let's open up the floor for questions. So if you have any questions regarding the console, regarding custom forms, regarding the online client information card, now's your chance. And again, if you're watching this video after the fact, go ahead and reach out to us on our Shortcuts company page or even our Shortcuts social media. We're on Instagram, Shortcuts USA. We're on Facebook, Shortcuts USA or Shortcuts North America, and we will get back to you. So I'll give everybody a moment if you have a question. I don't think we have any questions, and that's fine. You've probably sat in on previous presentations. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. So if you have a question for me after the fact, you're watching this video later today or this weekend, and you think about questions, go ahead and let us know. You can reach us at education@shortcuts.net, reach us on social media, or just give us a call, and we will get back to you. So thank you all for attending, and sorry, before I wrap this up, I think somebody does have a question. Rebecca has a question. What tablet is best to use with this program? It's not necessarily of which tablet works best, because this is just a web page you would go to. So you don't have to spend a lot of money. As long as you have a device that connects to the internet, and of course your internet connection is fine, then you should be able to use any device. It can be an inexpensive tablet. Does the screen, is it a certain size for you? Is it easy for you to read? Those are more of the questions you might want to consider. Is the screen bright enough for your employees or for your customers to read? So those are the things, but there's no perfect tablet. It really depends on what your needs are. Okay, and I don't think there are any other questions. But again, if you're watching this video after the fact, go ahead and send us an email and we will get back to you. So thank you all for attending, and I look forward to seeing you on the next classroom session. Have a great day, everybody.